Thompson had always believed that certain nights carried a different energy, as if the air itself became denser, heavier. On that particular night, as he walked the deserted streets of Cedar Falls, a small town in rural Minnesota, he felt exactly that. At 33, Marcus had learned to trust his instincts, especially after recent events that had begun to haunt his life in ways he couldn't yet fully comprehend. The full moon hung in the sky like a gigantic, relentless eye, watching every movement in the empty streets. Marcus adjusted his red turtleneck, feeling a shiver run down his spine. There was something off about this night, something that made his senses sharper, more alert. His normally calm blue eyes seemed to capture every shadow, every movement in the windows of the houses he passed. It was as if a primitive part of his brain was awake, whispering warnings that his conscious mind refused to accept. The problem had started a few weeks ago. Marcus would wake up in the mornings with aching body, strange marks on his skin, and a feeling that something terrible had happened during the hours he should have been sleeping. Scars and scratches appeared without explanation, as if he had fought epic battles in dreams he couldn't remember. His stubble reflected his growing stress, and he had lost weight, as if his body were being consumed by something internal and voracious. That night, Marcus had made a decision. He wouldn't sleep alone in his apartment again. He'd called his best friend since college, Derek Morrison, who lived across town in a secluded house near the pine forest surrounding Cedar Falls. Derek had readily invited him to spend the night, no questions asked, as he always did when Marcus needed support. It was this kind of solid friendship that Marcus valued above all else. As he approached Derek's house, Marcus felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. The two-story residence stood out among the trees, its illuminated windows creating a comforting contrast against the darkness of the surrounding forest. Derek always kept the lights on late, working on his architectural projects. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to calm the nerves that seemed increasingly jittery as the moon rose in the sky. As Marcus rang the doorbell, he noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Derek opened the door with his signature smile, a tall, thin man with red hair and glasses that always seemed to be slipping down his nose. He immediately sensed something was off about Marcus, but as always, he didn't ask any intrusive questions. He simply invited him in, offering coffee and the relaxed company that always characterized their interactions. Derek's house was a haven of normalcy. Books piled on every surface, plants scattered in corners, the familiar smell of coffee and paper. Marcus sat on the familiar couch trying to relax, but a part of his mind remained restless, like a caged animal. Derek made a simple snack and sat next to his friend, discussing work projects and trying to keep the conversation light and comforting. As the night wore on, Marcus began to feel a subtle but unmistakable transformation taking place within him. It was as if something ancient and primal was awakening in his cells, a genetic inheritance that had lain dormant throughout his adult life. His senses grew sharper with each passing hour. He could hear Derek's heartbeat from across the room, could smell every scent in the house with an almost painful intensity. Derek noticed that Marcus was restless, shifting constantly on the couch, his blue eyes taking on a predatory intensity he'd never seen before. When asked if he was okay, Marcus only mumbled something about not having slept well in the last few weeks. But the truth was much more complex and terrifying. He felt as if he were losing control over his own body, as if an external force was gradually taking over his movements and thoughts. The full moon outside the window seemed to exert a magnetic pull on Marcus. He found himself staring at it repeatedly, feeling a primal, inexplicable connection. Each time his eyes met that cold, silvery light, a wave of heat coursed through his body, starting in his chest and spreading to his extremities. His nails felt like they were growing, and he instinctively hid them in his clenched fists. Derek suggested they watch a movie to pass the time, but Marcus could barely focus on the screen. His hearing picked up sounds of the forest that would normally be imperceptible to human ears. The rustling of small animals among the leaves, the nocturnal flight of owls, even the growth of plants seemed to create a natural symphony that echoed in his mind with crystal clarity. It was simultaneously mesmerizing and terrifying. Around midnight, Derek announced he was tired and was going to his room. He prepared the sofa bed for Marcus, offering extra blankets and making sure his friend was comfortable. Marcus thanked him, but deep down he knew sleep would be impossible. There was an energy coursing through his veins that kept him on high alert. When Derek disappeared upstairs, Marcus was left alone in the darkened living room, with only moonlight filtering through the curtains. The silence of the house seemed to amplify every sensation Marcus experienced. He could feel his heart beating harder, faster. His breathing became deeper, more animalistic. When he looked at his hands, he noticed that the skin felt different, as if tiny hairs were beginning to sprout in places where they had never existed before. Panic began to set in, but it was accompanied by a strange sense of power and freedom. Marcus tried to calm himself, breathing deeply and telling himself that it was just his imagination and stress. But when he got up from the couch to get a drink of water in the kitchen, he noticed his movements were different. More fluid, more predatory. It was as if his muscles had gained a new coordination, a new strength. Every step seemed calculated. Every movement had a feline precision he'd never possessed before. The transformation began almost imperceptibly, like a subtle shift in the texture of reality. Marcus stood in Derek's kitchen, holding a glass of water with hands that no longer felt entirely his own. In the dim light streaming through the window, he watched with growing horror as dark hairs began to sprout on his hands and forearms. It wasn't an illusion caused by fatigue or stress. It was real, tangible, irreversible. The first spasm of pain struck him like a bolt of lightning, shooting down his spine and radiating to every limb. Marcus dropped the glass, and the sound of it shattering on the kitchen floor echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. He doubled over, trying to control the agony that seemed to be rearranging his bone structure from the inside out. His teeth began to ache intensely, as if they were being pushed and molded into completely new shapes. Upstairs, Derek woke to the noise, but his still sleepy mind interpreted it as something accidentally falling. He considered going downstairs to check, but exhaustion prevailed. He remained in bed, unaware that downstairs his best friend was undergoing the most terrifying transformation of his life. Marcus tried to scream for help, but the sound that came from his throat was a guttural, animalistic groan he didn't even recognize. The pain intensified exponentially. Marcus felt as if every bone in his body was being broken and reshaped. His hands contracted into claws, his nails lengthening and hardening into lethal weapons. His jaw expanded, accommodating teeth that transformed into sharp fangs. His nose and mouth began to protrude forward, forming a snout that was partly human, partly bestial. It was a metamorphosis that defied every law of nature he knew. His red turtleneck began to tear as his torso expanded, muscles developing and reshaping beneath skin, now covered in jagged patches of dark fur. Marcus tried to cling to his humanity, repeating his own name in his mind, trying to remember who he was before this nightmare began. But the beast growing inside him had its own memories, its own instincts, its own insatiable hunger. His eyes, still recognizably human, filled with a rage and pain that transcended any previous experience. It was as if all the frustration, fear, and anguish of his life were being channeled through this monstrous transformation. He could see his distorted reflection in the stainless steel surface of the refrigerator, and the creature staring back was both himself and something completely alien. The transformation reached its peak when Marcus felt his mind split into two distinct consciousnesses. One part of him remained human, terrified and helpless, observing everything like a prisoner in his own body. The other part was pure predatory instinct, hunger, and a primal need to hunt. This second consciousness knew no morality, friendship, or compassion. It knew only the full moon that called to it, the smell of warm flesh that filled the house, and the bloodlust that pulsed through every fiber of its new being. When the transformation was finally complete, the creature that had been Marcus Thompson rose on two legs, but its posture was completely different. More animalistic, more predatory. It growled low, testing its new voice, its new muscles, its new capabilities. Upstairs, Derek remained asleep, completely oblivious to the fact that an ancient predator now inhabited his home. The creature Marcus had become moved through Derek's house with a supernatural silence. Each step was calculated, precise, as if his new instincts had completely mapped the environment in a matter of seconds. His heightened senses captured every detail of the residence. Derek's scent in the air, the heat of his body radiating from the bedroom upstairs, even the regular rhythm of his breathing as he slept. It was too much information for the human mind still resisting the depths of his consciousness to process. The duality between man and beast created a devastating internal conflict. Marcus's human side screamed silently, begging him to maintain control, reminding him that Derek was his best friend, someone who had always been there for him through the darkest moments of his life. But these thoughts were like whispers against a storm. The predatory conscience was much stronger, more immediate, more compelling. She didn't see Derek as a friend. She saw only vulnerable prey, alone and unprotected. The creature's muscles contracted and relaxed as it silently ascended the stairs. Its new anatomy allowed movements that defied normal human physics. It could move without making the slightest sound, its feet automatically finding the quietest spots on the wooden boards. It was as if millions of years of predatory evolution had been compressed into its transformation, giving it instinctive knowledge that transcended any human learning. In the second-floor hallway, the creature paused outside Derek's bedroom door. It could smell its friend's sleep, mixed with the familiar scent of his toiletries and the faint scent of coffee that always clung to his clothes. To Marcus's fragmented human mind, these scents triggered memories of years of friendship, shared moments, laughter, and deep conversations. To the beast, they were merely indicators that its prey was close and vulnerable. Its claws extended involuntarily, scraping almost imperceptibly against the wood of the door. The sound was so low that even his heightened senses couldn't detect it clearly, but it was enough to make Derek shift slightly in the bed. The creature froze completely, every muscle tense, waiting. It was a perfect predator, capable of remaining still for hours if necessary, waiting for the ideal moment to strike. Derek mumbled something unintelligible in his sleep and rolled over. The creature interpreted this as a sign that its prey was completely unprotected. Its breathing became deeper, more controlled. She could taste the metallic anticipation in its mouth, its fangs throbbing with a thirst that went far beyond physical hunger. It was a primal need to dominate, to hunt, to assert its position at the top of the food chain. Slowly, the creature placed a claw on the doorknob. The cold metal against his warm skin created a strange, almost electric sensation. For a moment, Marcus's human consciousness managed to emerge with enough force to make the creature hesitate. Memories flooded through his mind. Derek helping him through his difficult divorce. the nights they spent talking about life, the moments of unconditional support that defined their friendship. But the full moon outside pulsed with an energy that quickly neutralized this human resistance. The creature growled low, a sound that vibrated in its expanded chest like the engine of a biological warfare machine. She turned the doorknob slowly, feeling every gear of the mechanism through her heightened senses. The door opened silently, revealing Derek sleeping peacefully, completely oblivious to the predator that now stood in the doorway of his room. The creature remained in the doorway for long minutes, watching Derek sleep with an intensity that transcended any normal human experience. Its eyes, still recognizably human, but now glowing with a predatory inner light, analyzed every detail of the scene before it. Derek lay on his side, one hand dangling over the edge of the bed, completely vulnerable and confident in the safety of his own home. The cruel irony of the situation was not lost on Marcus's fragmented human consciousness. The internal conflict intensified until it became almost physically painful. Marcus could feel his human self fighting desperately to regain control, like a castaway trying to rise to the surface of turbulent waters. He tried to scream Derek's name, tried to do anything that might alert his friend to the impending danger. But his body wouldn't respond to the commands of his human mind. It was like being trapped in a prison of his own flesh and blood, watching helplessly as the beast made decisions that could destroy everything he held dear. The creature took a step into the room, then another. Derek's scent grew more intense, now mixed with the warm, metallic aroma of blood circulating beneath his skin. To the beast's predatory instincts, it was like the most intoxicating perfume in the world. Its nostrils flared, capturing every nuance of the scent, mentally mapping its prey's circulatory system through its sense of smell. It was a skill that should have been impossible, but now felt as natural as breathing. Derek stirred again in his sleep, this time turning onto his stomach, completely exposing his back. The creature interpreted this as an invitation, a sign of total submission. Its claws contracted automatically, muscles preparing for the final attack. But then something unexpected happened. Derek murmured Marcus's name in his sleep, a soft, affectionate sound that cut through the predator's consciousness like a blade. For a moment, everything stopped. The creature froze completely, as if struck by lightning. The name echoed in his transformed mind, triggering an avalanche of human memories that had been suppressed by the transformation. Marcus remembered who he truly was, his life before the curse, the relationships that gave meaning to his existence. His human personality fought back with renewed strength, pushing the bestial consciousness back into the depths of his mind. The moment of clarity lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough for Marcus to make a desperate decision. Instead of attacking Derek, he turned abruptly and ran for the bedroom window. His new muscles responded with a speed that defied physics, and before the beast could regain full control, Marcus had shattered the glass and leaped out into the night. The sound of shattering glass finally woke Derek, who sat up in bed, confused and frightened. Derek turned on the bedroom light and saw the broken window, cold air rushing in through the jagged hole in the glass. He shouted Marcus's name, worried his friend might have suffered some kind of psychotic break or accident. But when he ran downstairs to check the living room, he found only the abandoned blankets on the sofa bed and strange stains on the kitchen floor. There was an animal scent in the air he couldn't identify, mixed with the metallic scent of blood. The creature, now outside, raced into the forest with a speed no human could match. Branches and leaves posed no obstacle to its new form. It moved through the dense vegetation as if it were smoke. But even as it ran through the darkness of the forest, Marcus's fragmented mind knew it had only postponed the inevitable. The transformation was complete, and there was no turning back. Derek remained in his destroyed home, trying to process what had happened during that impossible night. He examined every piece of evidence: the broken window, the stains on the floor, the strange smell permeating the air. His rational mind searched for logical explanations, but a primitive part of his brain whispered truths he wasn't ready to accept. He called Marcus repeatedly, but every call went straight to voicemail. Worry turned to fear, and fear turned to a growing certainty that something fundamental had changed forever. Meanwhile, deep in the Cedar Falls forest, the creature that had been Marcus Thompson was discovering her new reality. Her expanded senses captured sounds and scents that painted a complete three-dimensional map of the entire forested region. She could sense every small animal hiding among the trees, every insect crawling across the damp earth, every drop of dew forming on the leaves. It was a sensory experience so intense it was almost spiritual, as if she had become an integral part of the nocturnal ecosystem. The hunger she felt now was unlike anything Marcus had experienced in his human life. It wasn't just a desire for food, but a primal need that engaged all her survival instincts. When a deer appeared in a nearby clearing, the creature didn't hesitate. The attack was swift, efficient, and brutal. For the first time since her transformation, she fed according to her new nature, and the satisfaction she felt was simultaneously terrifying and ecstatic. After satisfying its immediate hunger, the creature found a safe spot among the rocks of a small hill. There, shielded from the view of potential witnesses, it began to experience moments of mental clarity in which Marcus's consciousness emerged. These intervals became more frequent as the night progressed, as if the physical transformation was stabilizing and allowing its two natures to coexist more evenly. During these lucid moments, Marcus analyzed his situation with growing horror. He remembered everything: the transformation, the predatory instincts, the moment he nearly attacked Derek. The guilt was overwhelming, but at the same time, there was a part of him that couldn't deny the sense of power and freedom that his bestial form provided. It was as if his entire human life had been a prison he never knew he needed to escape. As dawn approached, Marcus felt the transformation begin to reverse. It was an equally painful process, but this time he was conscious and prepared. His bones contracted, his hair receded, and his human features gradually returned. When the process finally ended, he stood naked, wounded, and utterly exhausted in the middle of the forest. But he was alive, and more importantly, he was in control of his mind again. The problem was, Marcus knew this wasn't an isolated event. The curse that had transformed him hadn't disappeared with the sunrise. It lay dormant in his cells, waiting for the next full moon to awaken again. He thought about Derek, about how to explain what had happened, about how to protect the people he loved from his new nature. But as he walked the deserted streets of Cedar Falls toward his apartment, a dark part of his mind already anticipated with a mixture of dread and anticipation the moment when the full moon would once again illuminate the night sky. Marcus Thompson had discovered that some secrets were too heavy to carry alone, but also too dangerous to share. And while the world around him continued to spin normally, he knew his life had been forever divided between two realities: the man he was during the day, and the creature he became when the moon called his name through the darkness.